Good morning. Welcome to Creative Mornings Oakland, y'all. This month's theme was chosen by the Quebec chapter of Creative Mornings. The theme was illustrated by Felix Girard. Courageous creative work begins below the ground. Food is a powerful way to reconnect with one's roots. It's a medium reliant on old methods and recipes, but it's always open to new interpretations. And in its preparation, it's also an opportunity to reconcile like your whole self, your body and your mind. So I'm very excited to welcome our speaker for today and hear about his connections to his roots. San Francisco Chronicle named him 2017 Rising Star Chef. He was a featured contestant on Bravo's Top Chef Season 15, right? And was a semifinalist for the 2019 James Beard Award for television host. Please give a warm welcome to Chef to David Fu.
Oakland, what's up? Super glad to be here. I just want to say that this is a very sacred community space for me. So you guys coming here, whether you're from Oakland or not, coming into the Oakland Asian Cultural Center, this was a safe space for me as a teen, as an adolescent. If you don't know, in the 90s, Oakland was very, very rough. My parents worked all throughout the day, all throughout the night. This was a safe space for me to do my homework and not worry about the other things that a child shouldn't have to worry about. So thank you, Oakland Asian Cultural Center, for providing that. So to start off, I'm a first-generation Vietnamese American from Oakland, California. Any Oakland natives in here? Hey, there you go. Anybody that currently lives in Oakland? There you go. Anyone who's been here for more than 5 years? Hey, 10 years? Okay, cool. Just trying to get a vibe, you know, just trying to get a vibe, you know. And just because, you know, some of us are native, some of us stayed for 10, some of us stayed for 5, doesn't really mean anything. The most important thing is that you're part of this community and you're here, and I thank you, okay? Any first, second, third generation sons and daughters of immigrants? Love it. See, that's Oakland, right? You could walk into a room like this and every face, every background, every story is different. And what does that mean to say when you identify with these things, where you're from, what's your culture, what's your history, what's your heritage? For some, it may define the roots for who they are, but for me, it goes a little bit deeper. In 1977, my parents immigrated to Oakland from Phu Quoc. On the island, my maternal family have been producing fish sauce since 1895. Both sides are 8 generations of freedivers, so we have this special relationship with the ocean. And for most of my childhood, this is all I knew. In early 1975, my dad was forced into an army and to fight the Cambodian-Vietnamese War. And, you know, when people say the Vietnam War, I always ask them, which war are you talking about? In this case, it was specifically the Cambodian-Vietnamese War. And then in mid-1975, the fall of Saigon happened. And people always think in conversation with people that when the fall of Saigon happened, everything happened immediately. And just mind you, when you're in war, depending where you are regionally, it takes time for things to happen. Given the fact that my parents were on an island extremely far away from Saigon, it took them to about 1976 to have the repercussions of fall of Saigon have effect on their island. And then in 1976, they started sending people to re-education camps. So they fled to Thailand for their safety. And in Thailand, they were in refugee camps. My mother taught herself to cook in a refugee camp. We are refugees. This is why we're in Oakland. And my dad unknowingly had PTSD because of war. And it was often that he was angry or depressed. However, both used silence as a coping mechanism. For a long time, I struggled with my identity because I didn't know my roots. To have purpose, you must know your roots, where you come from, why you exist, how you got there. And lacking that really conflicted with me. It drove me to become destructive in my youth and teenage years and fed into my depression in my early years. It was toxic. However, it was food that gave me insight into my roots. My mother's an amazing cook. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen with my mother because I was a fat little boy. And even though I was a fat little boy, and that was our safe space. You know, I think it's instinctual when you love somebody, you want to feed somebody, right? My life was made better by her food. She taught me everything I know. My mother turned fish scraps that my father brought home into amazing meals. She learned to do that in the camps, but didn't say that she was doing it because we were poor. And at times, it was tough because we literally wouldn't talk to each other, except when we were in the kitchen. I would spend hours in there listening to everything because everything was a lesson in food that was learned through the lives that they had lived. It was a hidden window into their world. And how when I sat in the kitchen at home, that's when I started to learn about their lives. The life that I never knew, about how my parents fell in love, and even though they were refugees, they were together. Or how my mother learned how to cook with anything in the camps, even when it wasn't considered food. How there was time when food was so precious, it wasn't just an option for lunch or dinner, but it was a necessity for survival. And that alone illuminated the horrors of war for me. Learning about my roots connected me to others. The re-education camps that I mentioned earlier were basically concentration camps. At that time, the Vietnamese government, they had a list of people that they would assume were pro-democratic, pro-US, or anti-government in that space in that time. And basically, re-education meant that if you protested, if you didn't want to become a farmer, if you still wanted to teach, if you wanted to be a doctor, they would kill you, literally. My family was affected by the Khmer Rouge. Does anyone here know about the Khmer Rouge? I appreciate you guys raising your hands, but as a community space today, for those of you that haven't raised your hands, you should. Because I don't think the genocides you learn in school are important. I believe all genocides are to be learned. And it takes you, we have Google nowadays, Wikipedia, all that. It will take you probably a day to just learn about a few or more. And in our lifetimes, we have 80 years. I think the national average for a lifetime is about 75 years. You could take a day out of your life to learn about genocide, okay? But thank you. I'm not mad at you. I'm all serious and like snarling. No, I'm not mad at you. I think if you believe in the community space and you believe in people and you have human compassion, it's your duty as a citizen to learn. And if you're not learning, I don't know what you're doing. Excuse me. Thank you. I learned about the cost of war, especially Agent Orange, and how it affects my family to this day. Agent Orange is directly linked to leukemia. My uncle passed away from leukemia, and it wasn't until when he passed away that my family was able to connect the dots on where that came from. We immaturely blamed him because potentially his lifestyle, his diet, but now we understand that when he was a very little boy, he was with my grandpa when they sprayed the fields with Agent Orange. My grandpa immediately died. It took him 40 years to affect him. And additionally, the way it affects my family is that it's almost guaranteed that every other generation from my uncle will be affected with leukemia or a higher risk of leukemia. And that's just some aspects of learning about my own history through food, having that difficult conversation with my parents, especially my mom in the kitchen, is that an ingredient would come up and it would trigger a thought or memory of what she had gone through. For example, like I would throw away corn silk, and she was like, "Don't throw that away. Did you know that we used to starve?" And it opened this Pandora's box, this huge door and insight to a history and period of time in which she would never want to talk about, okay? In this difficult history, it made me kinder. It gave me purpose. It gave me human compassion. I think in part is that when you start to identify not just your own history and roots, but your own suffering that has affected you directly, you can connect with other people's suffering. And I believe that every single person in this room has related to some sort of history in effects to war, some sort of suffering. And if we open ourselves up to be vulnerable, it will allow us to be that way. Our roots goes beyond our family names, lineage, and events. It's about what makes us who we are. And by doing this, it allows us to form deep connections with people beyond our family circles. It's about roots, branches, and leaves that form an entire forest. And that is the foundation of community. And I'm so lucky and proud to find this place in the place I grew up in. Oakland, I love you.